The 9th of September, 1899, Volume 2, Faith, Hope and Charity. The Sole Royal Palace of God. Jesus continues to come, but with a look all new. It seemed that the trunk of a tree was coming out of his blessed heart, which contained 3 distinct roots. This trunk was leaning out of his heart into mine, and coming out of my heart, it formed many beautiful branches loaded with flowers, with fruits, with pearls and precious stones, shining like most refulgent stars. Now, seeing himself in the shade of this tree, my loving Jesus amused himself completely. More so, since many pearls were falling from the tree, which formed a beautiful ornament for his most holy humanity. While he was in this position, he told me, "Dearest daughter of mine, the 3 roots you see, which this tree contains, are faith, hope, and charity. The fact that you see this trunk coming out of me and entering into your heart means that there is no good that souls possess which does not come from me. Then, after faith, hope, and charity, the first development of this trunk is to make known that everything good comes from God, that creatures have nothing of their own but their nothingness, and that this nothingness does nothing but give me the freedom to enter into them and do what I want. However, there are other nothings, that is, other souls, who make opposition with their own human will. So because this knowledge is lacking, the trunk produces neither branches nor fruits nor anything else that is good. The branches which this tree contains, with all the apparatus of flowers, fruits, pearls and precious stones, are all the different virtues that a soul can possess. Now, who has given life to such a beautiful tree? Certainly the roots. This means that faith, hope, and charity embrace everything and contain all virtues, so much so that they are placed there as the basis and the foundation of the tree, and without them, no other virtue can be produced. I also understood that the flowers signify the virtues, the fruits, sufferings, the precious stones and pearls, suffering only out of pure love for God. This is why those pearls which were falling formed that beautiful ornament for our Lord. Now, while sitting in the shade of this tree, Jesus looked at me with tenderness, all paternal, and taken by a surge of love, such that it seemed he could not contain it within himself, he embraced me tightly and began to say, "How beautiful you are! You are my simple dove, my beloved dwelling, my living temple, in which I am pleased to delight, united with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Your continuous languishing for me relieves me and refreshes me from the continuous offences that creatures give me. Know that the love I have for you is so great that I am forced to hide it in part, so that you may not go mad but may live. In fact, if I showed it to you, you would not only go mad, but would not be able to continue to live. Your weak nature would be consumed by the flames of my love." While he was saying this, I felt all confused and annihilated, and I felt myself sinking into the abyss of my nothingness, because I saw myself all imperfect. Especially I noted my ingratitude and coldness at the so many graces that the Lord gives me. But I hope that everything will be for his glory and honour, hoping with firm confidence that in an effort of his love, he may want to conquer my hardness. End of the reading.
The 9th of September 1900, Volume 4. Jesus prepares the soul of Louisa for communion. The necessity of shedding of blood. He continues to come. However, I spent most of the night without Jesus. Then on coming he told me, "My daughter, what do you want, that you are so anxiously waiting for me? Do you perhaps need anything?" And since I knew I was to receive communion, I said, "Lord, I waited for you the whole night." Also because, having to receive communion, I fear that my heart may not be well disposed to be able to receive you. Therefore I need that my soul be reviewed by you, so that it may be disposed to unite me with you sacramentally. And Jesus benignly reviewed my soul to prepare me to receive him. Then he transported me outside of myself, and together with him I found our Queen Mama, who was saying to Jesus, "My son, this soul will always be ready to do and to suffer whatever we want, and this is like a bond that binds our justice. Therefore spare so many slaughters and so much blood, which is to be shed by the people." And Jesus said, "My mother, the shedding of blood is necessary, because I want this line of kings deposed from its throne, and this cannot be without blood. And this is also to purge my church, which is very much infected. At the most I can concede to spare them in part, out of regard for the sufferings." In the meantime, I saw the majority of the deputies plotting how to make the king fall, and they were thinking of putting on the throne one of those deputies who were assembled. After this, I found myself inside myself. How many human miseries! Ah, Lord, have compassion on the blindness in which poor humanity is immersed. Then, continuing to see the Lord and the Queen Mother, I saw the confessor with them, and the Most Holy Virgin said, "See, my son, we have a third party, the confessor, who wants to unite with us and offer his work by committing himself to concur in order to make her suffer, to satisfy divine justice. This too is like rendering the rope stronger, which binds you in order to placate you. Besides, when have you ever resisted the strength of the unions of one who suffers and prays, and one who concurs with you for the sole purpose of glorifying you and for the good of the peoples?" Jesus was listening to his mother. He had regard for the confessor, but he did not pronounce the sentence completely favourable. Rather, he limited himself to spare in part. End of the reading.
9th of September 1901, Volume 4, Effectiveness of the Intentions. This morning my adorable Jesus was not coming. Then, while my mind was occupied with considering the mystery of the crowning of thorns, I remembered that other times as I was occupied with this mystery, the Lord had pleased to remove the crown of thorns from his head and drive it onto mine. So I said in my interior, "Ah, Lord, I am no longer worthy of suffering your thorns." And all of a sudden he came, for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, when you suffer my own thorns, you relieve me, and in suffering them yourself, I feel completely free of those pains. When you humble yourself and believe yourself unworthy of suffering them, you repair for the sins of pride which are committed in the world." And I added, "Ah, Lord, for as many drops as you shed, for as many thorns as you suffered, for as many wounds, so much glory do I intend to give you, for as much glory as all creatures should give you if the sin of pride did not exist. And so many graces do I intend to ask of you for all creatures, so that this sin be destroyed." While saying this, I saw that Jesus contained the whole world within himself, like a machine containing objects in itself. All creatures moved within him, and Jesus moved toward them, and it seemed that Jesus would receive the glory of my intention, and that creatures had returned to him in order to receive the good impetrated by me for them. I remained stupefied, and he, seeing my stupefaction, said, "All this seems surprising, doesn't it? What you have done seems a trivial thing, yet it is not so. How much good could be done by repeating this intention, but is not." Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading.
The 9th of September, 1904, Volume 6. As soon as the soul goes out of the depths of peace, she goes out of the divine sphere. Peace reveals whether the soul seeks God or for herself. Continuing in my usual state, I felt disturbed because of the absence of my adorable Jesus. Then, after I struggled very much, he came and told me, "My daughter, as soon as the soul goes out of the depths of peace, she goes out of the divine sphere and finds herself either in the diabolical or in the human sphere. It is peace alone that reveals whether the soul seeks God or for herself, whether she operates for God or for creatures. In fact, if she does it for God, the soul is not disturbed. It can be said that the peace of God and the peace of the soul combine together, and the boundaries of peace expand around the soul in such a way that everything converts into peace, even wars themselves. But if the soul is disturbed, be it even in the holiest things, it shows after all that it was not for God, but for her own self or for some human purpose. Therefore, when you do not feel calm, call yourself a little to see what actually is in there. Destroy it, and you will find peace. End of the reading.
The 9th of September, 1910, Volume 9. Laments of the Soul for not being able to hold back the chastisements. Continuing in my usual state, blessed Jesus was not coming, and I was saying to myself, how Jesus has changed with me, how he no longer loves me as before. Before I was permanently bedridden, when there was the cholera, he himself begged me that if I accepted sufferings for a few days, he would make the cholera cease. And since I accepted them, the scourge did cease. But now he keeps me continuously in bed. One hears about the cholera and the torments it causes to the poor people, and he does not want to listen to me. How he no longer wants to make use of me. While saying this, I went about looking within me, and I saw Jesus there with his head raised, looking at me and listening to me, all moved. And when he saw that I noticed he was looking at me, he told me, "My good daughter, how importunate you are to me. You want to win by force, don't you? All right, but do not molest me any more." And he disappeared. End of the reading.
The 9th of September 1922, Volume 14. In creating man, God formed a kingdom for himself. The contentment of Jesus when he sees in a creature not only the image of his humanity, but all that his divinity operated in it. My ever-sweet Jesus continues to speak about his most holy will. He showed his heart opened, from which many rivulets of light came out, which wounded all creatures, and forming a net of light, overwhelmed everything. And he began to speak, telling me, "My daughter, in creating the first man, I gave start to the creation of mankind. And after I formed his body, with my omnipotent breath, I infused in him the soul. And with another breath of mine, I could say, I infuse myself in the depth of man, in order to sustain him, dominate him, and keep him safe. So that man formed a kingdom for me, in which I, as king, was to extend my boundaries. My joy reached the summit. in seeing in this man the generation almost interminable of many other beings, which would provide me with as many other kingdoms for as many other creatures as would come to light, in whom I was to reign and expand my divine boundaries. And all the good of all the other kingdoms was to overflow for the glory and honour of the first kingdom, which was to be the head of the others, and as though the prime act of creation. But as man withdrew from my will, my kingdom and his ended. Not only this, but he trampled me and placed himself to reign in my place, idolizing himself and forming the reign of vices, of miseries, of disasters. My joy died at birth and turned into sorrow. See, all evil was in his withdrawal from my will. Our love did not stop. I did not want to be the isolated God, no. Therefore I wanted to descend from heaven, taking on a humanity similar to the first man. I enclosed all of creation in it. I bound the human will of this humanity to the divine will, so that this human will, embracing all creation and all their acts within the divine will, might bring it to my throne as triumphant over all human acts, which had been changed by it into acts of divine will. With this, the human will took possession of the divine will, and the divine took possession of the human, one lording over the other. In fact, when one being forms one single thing with another being, if one is Lord, the other too becomes Lord as though naturally. The only reason for which I had commanded man to abstain from the fruit prohibited by me was this. I wanted an act of sacrifice of his will in mine, so that through this sacrifice, binding his human will within mine, he might take possession of my will, and I of his, and both might reign with the same power, wisdom, and goodness. I wanted him in nothing dissimilar from myself. He was a birth from me. He was my son. And what father does not love that his son be rich and happy as he is? More so for me, celestial Father, who would lose nothing in rendering this son of mine rich, happy, and reigning like me. So, as man broke his human will from mine, my love did not remain quiet, but raised its flames higher. At any cost, I wanted to produce another myself, and so I chose my humanity, which, sacrificing itself to my will in everything, took possession of my will, letting me accomplish within itself the purpose of the creation of man. In fact, my usual way is to carry out my greatest enterprises with one alone, and then I diffuse them. Was it not one man alone that ruined all my designs? So my humanity alone was to repay me for this ruin, and the power of my will, enclosing all creation in it, was to return to me the loves, the kisses, and the caresses which the first man had so brutally rejected. My love, laying down the garments, I could say, of sorrow and mourning, clothed itself anew in feast, and, triumphant, gave itself to the greatest excess and follies of love. So when I want to do a work with the creature, I always begin one-on-one, as if no one else existed, and then I extend it so much as to fill heaven and earth. Now my daughter, my love, wants to produce again, and while taken by excesses, it goes out to take respite. It wants to deliver new births, and just as it operated in my humanity, enclosing all of creation in it, so that it might give to the Father everything he wanted from it, and let everything descend for the good of all creatures, so now, binding your will with mine, I want to enclose all of creation in you, and letting you take possession of my will. I want to feel my acts, my love, my pains, being repeated in you. I want my reflector on earth, so that in looking at it, I may see in you as though in a mirror the creation which I created in heaven, and which my humanity enclosed within itself. And in reflecting myself in this mirror, I may recognize creation in you. We will be in continuous mutual reflections. I will make creation be reflected in you and you in me. I from heaven, you from the earth. Then will my love be content when I see in a creature not only the image of my humanity, but all that my divine will operated in it. Therefore be attentive and follow my will. End of the reading.
9th of September 1923, volume 16. It is impossible that it might be the devil to manifest the knowledges and the secrets of the divine will, because it is hell for him, and he knows it only to hate it. I still had another strong fear. Who knows whether it might not be my adorable Jesus to deign to speak to me, manifesting to me so many sublime truths, especially on the divine will, but the devil, in order to deceive me. And while it seems that he raises me up high with so many truths, he then makes me fall into the abyss. And I said to myself, my Jesus, free me from the hands of the enemy. I don't want to know anything. All I care about is to save my soul. And blessed Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, why do you fear? Don't you know that the thing which the infernal snake knows the least about me is my will? Because he did not want to do it, and by not doing it, he did not know it nor love it. And even less did he penetrate into the secrets of my inscrutable volition in order to know the effects and the value of my will. And if he does not know them, how could he speak about them? Even more, the thing which he abhors the most is that the creature do my will. He does not care whether the soul prays, goes to confession, goes to communion, does penance, or makes miracles. But the thing which harms him the most is that the soul do my will, because as he rebelled against my will, then was hell created in him, his unhappy state, the rage that consumes him. Therefore, my will is hell for him, and every time he sees the soul being subject to my will and knowing its qualities, value, and sanctity, he feels hell being redoubled, because he sees the paradise, the happiness, and the peace he lost being created in the soul. And the more my will is known, the more tormented and furious he is. So how could he possibly speak to you about my will if it forms his hell? And if he did speak to you, his words would form hell in you, because he knows my will only to hate it, not to love it. And whatever is hated never brings happiness and peace. Besides, his word is empty of grace, and so he cannot confer the grace to do my will. End of the reading.
The 9th of September 1926, volume 19. When Jesus speaks, he gives the good which his word encloses. In the divine will, there will be neither slaves nor rebels, nor laws nor commands. I was thinking, how much power, how many goods are enclosed in the holy divine will, how everything is peace in it, everything is happiness, nor does one need commands in order to operate, but one's own nature feels so much strength of good within itself that it cannot help doing it. What happiness to feel one's own nature converted into good, into sanctity, into strength. So in the kingdom of the supreme will there will be no laws, but everything will be love, and one's nature will be converted into divine law, in such a way that of its own it will want to do what the supreme fiat wants it to do. Now, while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus, with his usual light which he sent forth from his intelligence, told me, "My daughter, everything I have told you about my will has been gifts that I have given you. Knowledge is not enough if one does not possess the good which that very knowledge contains. If it were not so, the knowledge would render you unhappy, because knowing a good and not possessing it is always a sorrow. More so, since I do not know how to leave things half done, but only fully complete. Therefore, first I dispose the soul, I expand her capacity, and then I give the knowledge, together with the good it contains. And since the knowledges about my will are divine, this is why her nature remains endowed with the likeness of the divine nature, and more than a daughter, she does not wait for a command, but without being told feels honoured to do what her father wants. Laws and commands are for servants, for slaves, for rebels. In the kingdom of the supreme fiat there will be no servants, no slaves, no rebels, but one will be the will, that of God and that of the creature, and therefore one will be the life. This is also the reason why I am saying so much and so many things about my will, to abound in gifts, not only for you, but for any soul who wants to come to live in my kingdom, so that she may lack nothing, need nothing, but possess the source of goods within herself. I would not act as the God that I am, great, powerful, rich, magnanimous, if in having to constitute the kingdom of my will, I did not endow those who must live in it with the prerogatives and qualities that my very will possesses. Even more you must know that just as all things have come out of that one single act of God, so must everything return to that single act, which has no succession of acts. But only one who leaves everything to live only of my will can return to that single act, because, as the soul lives in it, everything she does converts into light, and her acts are naturally incorporated and identified with the eternal light of the Son of my will. And as a consequence they become one single act with the single act of it. On the other hand, in one who operates outside of it, one can see not light, but each of the materials that her work contains, which cannot be incorporated with the light of the single act of God, and therefore it will show immediately that it is not our thing, that it does not belong to us. So, anything which is not done by virtue of the divine fiat will not be recognized by God. Suppose you wanted to unite light and darkness, copper and gold, rocks and earth. Would one not distinguish with clarity the light from the darkness, the copper from the gold, the rocks from the earth? And this because these are materials, one different from the other. But if you united all together, light with light, darkness with darkness, gold with gold, you would not be able to distinguish nor separate the first light from the second, the first darkness from the second, the first mass of gold from the second. So it is with my will. What it itself does in the creature is light, and it is no wonder that it becomes incorporated in the single act of its eternal light. Therefore, in these times so stormy and with a vertiginous race in evil, I could not give greater grace than making known that I want to give the great gift of the kingdom of the supreme fiat. And as a confirmation of this, I am preparing it within you with so many knowledges and gifts, so that nothing may be lacking to the triumph of my will. Therefore be attentive on the deposit of this kingdom, which I am making in you." After this, I felt concerned, because holy obedience had imposed on me not to neglect even one word of that which my sweet Jesus might say to me, while I easily leave them out, because I am convinced that it is not necessary to write and to entrust to the paper certain intimate things, certain outpourings that Jesus makes to my poor soul, but that they should remain in the depths of the heart. So I was praying that he would give me the grace not to fail the obedience. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, if the one who guides you and directs you gives you this obedience, it means that he has understood that it is I who speaks to you, as well as the value that even a single word of mine contains. My word is light and is full of life, and one who possesses life can give it. More so, since my word contains the creative power, and therefore a single word of mine can create innumerable lives of grace, lives of love, lives of light, lives of my will within souls. You yourself will not be able to comprehend the long way that a single word of mine can cover. Those who have ears will listen. Those who have heart will be wounded. So the one who guides you is right in giving you this obedience. You do not know how I assist him and remain around him while he reads my writings and yours about my will, so as to make him comprehend all the strength of the truths and of the great good contained in them. And he turns around my will, and by virtue of the light that he feels, he is sending you this obedience. Therefore be attentive, and I will help you and facilitate that which seems difficult to you. You must know that my heart is swollen. It agonizes and sighs, because I want to make known the kingdom of the supreme fiat, the great goods which are in it, and the great good which those who will possess it will receive. It is precisely in my heart that I keep it, and I feel my heart explode, for I want to let it out. Don't you want then to give me this relief, so that by letting it out, my heart may deflate, and so it will not have to agonize and sigh with sorrowful sighs any more? And you will do this by making known what I manifest to you about my will, because when you do this, you give me the field in order to open the ways and prepare the place in which I must lay the kingdom of my will. And if you do not manifest what I say to you, you close these ways, and my heart swells even more. Therefore, let me do, and you follow me, and do not be concerned." End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.